I hope you're comfortable. Today on Eric Hates Games, we invite our guests to share what they've been playing and why. Who knows what branches will shoot from our conversations about the very thing that roots us, games. If you'd like to join as a guest, or you just want us to talk about your favorite game, send a carrier pigeon to @gmail.com. So, with care not to slurp too offensively, let's open the floor. My name is Eric, and what have you been playing?
So, I have been playing Death Stranding lately, which just came out, and it is controversial for many reasons. So allow me to sip my tea offensively. Right. So Death Stranding is quite literally the definition of a walking simulator. It simulates walking, and it's also a delivery game. So basically, most of the game is just walking from point A to point B, delivering packages. The best way I can describe this working is that in any other game you play, you're kind of using like training wheels almost for walking, and in this you actually have to balance yourself. So you have to manage your cargo by making sure it's on each side of your body, because if one side has more weight than the other, you're going to start leaning that way more. And then when you're actually walking, you have to actually press the triggers to balance your weight.
Okay, so what that sounds like to me is Tony Hawk's Pro Skater.
Yeah.
The grinding mini game in Tony Hawk.
That
right?
is.
Where you have can you fall over in Death Stranding?
Yes, you can fall over and drop all your packages, and then it gets damaged, and that's your penalty for playing bad.
And can you pick them up and keep going?
Yeah, but if they break, then you're screwed, and the person that's expecting a package is going to be very upset when he found out that the Amazon delivery man just started chucking them at the warehouse.
Aren't some of the packages like bombs and stuff?
Yeah, it's
and
some.
Then you can like
there's
blow
other
up.
Questionable stuff as well.
Oh, do they sell like illicit objects in packages?
No,
Are
just
you
not PG objects.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's most of what Amazon sells is not PG objects. It's like their top sellers. But
Fair.
How do you feel right now about Monster Energy drink?
I'm perfectly fine with there being Monster Energy drink in the game. It has saved me many times.
But do you want to drink one right now?
Not at all, but I never do. But you know what? Good for Kojima and Monster Energy, I guess. It's funny to meme about.
Okay. So if you're unaware, which is totally okay, Death Stranding is a video game by this wild genius auteur, Hideo Kojima, who is mostly known for making Metal Gear Solid games. And this game had a ton of hype around it, mostly because the mystere. People didn't know what it was about, and we now learn that it's just a delivery game they spent many years on this game. It's a large team, but it also stars many celebrities.
Yeah.
So can you tell us how you feel about seeing Norman Reedus in this game all the time? You play as Norman Reedus.
Yes. So I have to backtrack slightly.
Yeah.
So the big thing about the game and why people were hyped about it, other than just the mystery of it, was that Hideo Kojima and the company he used to work for, Konami, had a big falling out right before. And he was also working on a game that everyone was really hyped about called Silent Hills, which was a reboot to the Silent Hill series, allegedly. And we got one really, really good demo game about it, which got everyone really hyped, and that had Norman Reedus in it. So that's sort of where the connection started for them. And also, I believe Guillermo del Toro did the monster design for it.
The Monster Energy drink design.
No, not the Monster Energy drink design.
Okay.
But, so basically, he left the company after the falling out and then started a new company because he got hired by Sony this time, and they gave him some large check to make whatever game he wanted. And he made Death Stranding. And he goes on the Game Awards show like 3 years ago and goes, "Hello everyone, I'm back." And then shows off a trailer of naked Norman Reedus holding a fetus.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
And everyone's like, "What the heck is this game?" And now we have the game, and everyone's still like, "What the heck is this game?"
Yeah. That's a wild selling point. I don't know if I can think of the top of my head other things that have successfully launched around the idea of what is this?
Yeah, I mean, if there's any man that's going to do it and do it well, it would be Hideo Kojima.
Yeah.
Because the man's just a lunatic in the best way.
Yeah. What is this game? Well, we had spoilers around the what is it, the Avengers? Remember that came out? The one with the spoilers, and everyone was like, "No, don't spoil it."
Oh yes, Endgame.
Yeah. So I guess there was a little bit of mysterious stuff there, like what's gonna happen? I don't know. Thanos. It's a pretty bad one. Yeah. Anyways, Andrew is glad that he stayed away from this game. Can you tell us why?
So there's a reason most games stay away from a high level of realism. One exception to that would be a game like Manual Daniel,
Okay.
which is purposefully very difficult. It's like, or QWOP, which people love to compare Death Stranding to. I believe QWOP is a much more enjoyable game.
Yeah, definitely.
But when I see gameplay of Death Stranding, it makes me sad
Yeah.
every time, or confused.
Okay.
I just I'll see somebody walking in like a straight line into the distance with mountains and like an overcast sky, and it's just like that and more of that. And it's either that hyper realism or something so incredibly dumb, or something that shouldn't be implemented in a game because it would piss people off, like getting stuck every time or flipping your car over, or glitching up a mountain on a motorcycle, which I saw, and I was like, they got the walking so realistic, and then
Right. So games with an extreme amount of realism, and then we get to see windows into the fact that we are playing video games. When I watch Red Dead Redemption 2, I think of that too, because there's so much realism in the horses, down to the backsides of the horses, which you see a lot of, which is funny to, anyways. But there's so much realism with the movement of the horses, even, and the galloping. And then you have this horse running down railroad tracks, and I'm like, I don't know if horses would really run down gravel, like maybe, but like you could trip it up and break a leg on the railroad track, and I don't know. For some reason, that does also break the immersion for me.
yeah, and like with Red Dead, you could your meat could spoil and stuff like that, like things that you don't actively think about when you're playing a game. That kind of that crossover between real life, but it's like the frustrating parts of life that make it in.
The frustrating parts make it as game mechanics. The chores, because games are all about things that you have to do.
But usually they serve it in a way that's more enjoyable, less frustrating. But like when you're faced with figuring out how to balance and walk in a game just to complete an objective, and you have to continually do that, it stops becoming a game and starts becoming a chore.
However,
Yeah.
despite all that, in a weird way, I still enjoy my time with Death Stranding. Maybe it's the really good soundtrack, or maybe it's kind of like Shenmue, where you're doing a lot of mundane stuff, and you're passing the time, and you shouldn't be enjoying it, but for whatever reason, you are.
Yeah, and it also presses up against that idea of games as being escapist joy fountains, right? Like, we saw movies go through this already. Film has gone through this over and over again, where you had French New Wave films that questioned what a film was. I'm thinking of Jean Dielman, which is just like 3 hours of a housewife cooking, and then something one like notable thing happens throughout the whole movie, and that's like a well-revered movie because it's the opposite of what everything else. There's no buildings being crashed into or Thanos is snapping, right? Like, it's just a single woman's life. And Roma is similar to this. Roma came out a couple years ago, and it got a lot of accolades. But let's move on to another game, lest we turn this into the Death Stranding episode. So a game I've been playing is called Dynamite Headdy. Have either of you heard of this?
I have not.
Okay, it came out in '94, and it's by Treasure, the developer's Treasure, and that's the reason why I gave it a second look this late from 1994. I was like, oh yeah, that's right, Treasure made Dynamite Headdy. I should play it. So Treasure made Gunstar Heroes probably most famously. Have you played that at all?
I know the name.
Okay, it's Gunstar Heroes is a run and gun game.
Mm-hmm.
It's Contra.
Yeah.
But you can get power-ups to change your guns, and you can combine power-ups. So the green gun is the homing gun, and the red one is the machine gun, but if you get them together, then you get a homing machine gun. And Treasure has always had amazing boss designs. They also made Mischief Makers, Stretch Panic, and Ikaruga.
Okay.
So, I don't know, I've been enjoying it. It has, you play as this anthropomorphic ant type thing that throws its head, and the head throwing is an attack, and it's also a grappling hook, which is neat. And then it has this weird stage/theater motif where your health bar is actually a spotlight, and every time you get hit, the spotlight gets redder and redder. You know, it goes from green to yellow to red. But yeah, I don't know. Does anyone have questions about this old, obscure Sega Genesis game I've been playing?
I like that spotlight thing. That sounds, I don't know, like, that sort of brings the health meter kind of more into the game world,
Mhm.
which is always a lot more fun than just staring at a bar going down.
Yeah, because typically you have the overlaid canvas of UI that's over everything in the game, and a health bar is a bar that is red. But you're right, yeah, it's I forget the word, it's diegetic is the film word, right? Like it's within the game, your health bar is part of that. Is there any other games you can think of that do that?
I'm trying to think of.
I feel like Persona would have something similar, but no, they just have numbers.
They just have really beautiful menus.
Yeah.
And the combat system specifically with 5, they sort of decided, hey, maybe scrolling through a bunch of menus to do attacks isn't that fun.
Mhm.
So basically, all your attacks are set to different categories, and then you sort of see these little offshoots from your character with just different button inputs that say, like, triangle for persona powers. What was it? X is just regular attack, and
Of course.
square is items. I don't know if I got that right, but I feel like I got it right.
It's okay. We'll have our experts fact checking. We have live fact checking for Persona UI.
I haven't played Persona 5 in a hot minute. I feel so disappointed with myself.
I'm sad. Do you want to tell us in 40 seconds about Splitgate?
So, because I've been away at college, I haven't had as much time to get into games, so I've started to play shorter bursts of more PvP games like Splitgate, which is a combination between Halo and Portal. It's like an arena shooter, and it is very fun to play because it's both tactical and at the same time sort of a puzzle game, because you're looking for positions and where you can put your portal next and kind of jump through, and every player has an EMP grenade that can destroy portals.
Whoa.
Yeah,
Neat.
and it's like Halo where you have weapons that spawn about the map, and it's sort of like it's a balance between positioning, but also, you know, like regular skill with shooting and everything, which feels amazing.
Yeah. Can you shoot through the portals?
I think so. The way it works is your team's portals you can see through, like it's a window, but the enemy team's portals are opaque. They're covered. But you can still go through them. So you can use them,
Dangerous.
like you can put one up, like you could, you know, have a portal in a safe space and then another one up at like the top of a map if there's all portals have to be on a special surface, like in Portal games.
Yeah.
It's like a very glowy blue thing, but it's all over the place. And
so you can set traps.
Yeah, you could have like maybe like a portal in a hallway that they don't see, and then they walk by. But it's also a very fast-paced game.
Yeah.
So it's this like weird dissonance, but also it works together in very unexpected ways. Like Mac movement is obviously super fast if you can just portal over to the other side. So like a game mode like Capture the Flag is very chaotic because instead of like sort of that, you know, progression of moving to the other side, it's like, and then they're all on the other side again, and they're all over the place, and it is chaos in the best possible way.
So you're enjoying it?
When I do play it, I really enjoy it because it's like you don't have to think too much, but if you do,
Really?
there's a high skill cap because of the portal mechanics.
Uh-huh.
But at the same time, you still have to depend on your own individual skill with using the weapons and everything.
That's great. Well, let's take a break, and we'll be right back with more insightful discussions after this. We're going to continue our discussion on general what have we been playing, and I hope you enjoy. Have either of you played Half-Life, the first one?
I have.
Yeah, you have?
I have, yes.
What do you think about it?
I enjoy it. I don't think it's as good as 2. I think 2 is significantly better, but for the first game in the series, and I think the first game by Valve, it still holds up really well.
Yeah. So Valve is now the mega giant that owns digital distribution on PCs, meaning Steam. Okay, so the Steam store where most people purchase their games on computers nowadays are that's owned by Valve, and Valve made Half-Life.
Mm-hmm.
But so a few things jumped out to me playing Half-Life, I don't know, 15 years after, 20 years, 25 years after it was made, something like that. And one of the things that jumped out to me is the level design, in that there are very few arrows pointing on where to go, but for some reason I knew where to go. Everything was intuitive. I don't know if you can recall that specific part about that game. Did you have any trouble getting to the next checkpoint?
No, not really.
No, right? And like, what's weird about the game is there are points where you go down hallways and there's only one open door, so you go through there. But there are other points where you have to like crouch, get inside an air duct, and crawl and find your way through weaving passages to get to the next point. And somehow I always got through. So that was really interesting to me. There's no tutorials at all. So when you're low on health, there's little health packs on the wall.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
But like when you go up to the health pack, there's no on-screen prompt that says press E to interact. There's no on-screen prompt that says heal here or anything. You just have to figure it out. So it's always interesting to me to see design change throughout the years and how back when that game came out, it was okay to not tell things to the player. And it was expected as the player that you learn things, which is a decent segue to a game that you've been playing and I actually picked up recently called Slay the Spire. Do you want to tell us about Slay the Spire?
So Slay the Spire is kind of its own genre of deck building game, but also sort of strategy and replayability, kind of like all mixed into one bag.
Mm-hmm.
I bought it pre-release because it just looked so interesting, and I saw some gameplay of it, and I instantly knew I wanted to play this game. It's so kind of like different than like, because most deck building games, you're playing with physical cards.
Mm-hmm.
Or you something like Hearthstone, where you have to buy packs, but in Slay the Spire, you kind of progress with your decks. You pay for the game once, and you start with basic moves in the very beginning, and it also works with probability, like most other deck builders, where you can like throw away cards, but you just start with like basic attack and defense cards.
Yeah, and just to be clear, every time you play the game, you start with that deck.
Yeah.
You don't build a deck and then start with it. You basically have what are called runs.
Yeah.
And this is common in roguelike games as well, where you start the run, and in all deck builders it's the same. Whether it's Dominion, where you start with 7 copper, 3 estates, or Ascension, where it's 8 guys and 2 military guys. But yeah, you start with that, and then the game is actually building your deck. But what's interesting, like you mentioned, is it's a video game. You're playing cards in a video game. And also, there's like an overworld map. Do you want to talk about that?
So there's this stylized overworld that you start at one point, and it kind of branches out, and you see these different paths and nodes and things, what connects to each other. So you can kind of see what's up ahead for the most part, and you kind of pick your path away around. But the only real indicators there are is that there's a monster room, which is like a generic symbol for a monster. Then you have a treasure room and a mystery room. So the mystery room is usually some sort of risk-reward situation where you could pick up like a powerful artifact, but you might get a curse card that's permanently in your deck that you can't remove, which is really frustrating.
Yeah.
And like, let's say you draw that card in one of your hands, you just take damage, and it also takes up space, which means you can't have a different card there. And then you kind of see like the best path might not be the optimal path from what it looks like, because sometimes those mystery spaces you'll get like 3 in a row and they're all just like 100% win-win and you get lucky. But sometimes you'll be like, there might be like a path with like maybe a bunch of treasure chests and easy enemies there, because there's also mini bosses that give you artifacts when you defeat them, which is basically just like a modifier that might do something.
Benefits.
Yeah, a lot of them. Some of them are like very situational, but they're very, very useful. And what you see is sometimes you'll get to a certain point in the game where you'll hit a dead end, and you basically like after that, it's like all in the heart of the cards, basically. But what I really like about it, too, is that it's split up into different sections. So you have the overworld map of one sort of layer of the spire, because each node is a floor.
Oh, okay.
And then there's like these larger sections.
Yeah.
And like there's a boss at the end of every single section, and there's usually like campfires right before it, which you can either choose to upgrade cards or heal at. And what ends up happening is if you defeat that boss at the end, you instantly heal up, which is really great. It's like that, like just like one more, because if you make it past this, then you have a fresh start at the next floor, which it's always progressively harder and more difficult, but it really creates a great gameplay loop. And another thing is that as you play the game more often, you unlock more and more cards that you can put into your deck, and you can kind of like see the certain strategies start to formulate in the synergy between cards.
Yeah.
And it just like feeds into itself very cleanly.
Yeah.
So like you could like play like 3 hours in one run sometimes, like depending on how you play the game changes how long it takes, because you could either play like continuously just keep going, or you could, think about it, because there's no telling like you what to do. You could wait and think and formulate a strategy, or you could just run right into something. Right.
It's also nicely designed in that it is it's like sub chunks within sub chunks. So like you said, you can do a whole run and try to get to the boss, and that might take a full hour, or you can do one floor, and that will take 10 minutes. Maybe 10 minutes.
That's a long floor battle.
Right. So then you can do a few floors, which will take you a half hour, and you can kind of choose your play length each time you sit down to play, which is really nice for me, because maybe I'll boot it up while I'm doing something else, or when I have to listen to something or watch something in the background, and I only have 10 minutes. So I'll play for 10 minutes, and then I can leave and come back and still pick up and play.
I definitely say that it plays differently for each of those circumstances.
Yeah.
Because when you play consecutively, it sort of, you start to feel the stakes of things a lot, and you get into it, and it's got the music in the background, the battle music. But like when you sort of have it on the background, it becomes this more like, okay, like you sort of passively think about it while you're away.
Yeah.
And then usually you're a little bit more cool-headed, and you don't. And it's sort of like this interesting thing where you either could play it like just as a game, or sort of like a side activity.
Yeah.
But
which I think is nice. And a lot of tactical games, programming is like a mechanic where you set your things to go and then they go. And turn-based games are often usually like this, where you can take your time. And that's really nice for a lot of players. It also might have been influenced by mobile game design, because mobile games are all about your key experience being as long as you have. And if you have 5 minutes, you can play a level of Candy Crush. Or if you have 5 minutes, you can play one Mario Run or one race in Mario Kart, and then go away. But you can do that 20 different times throughout the day, and all of a sudden you've spent an hour, right? And that is really interesting. But let's take it back to almost the complete opposite. Games that require you to sit there and play through them for a little bit longer. Adam, tell us a little bit about Shadow Hearts.
Oh boy. So Shadow Hearts is a game that I have been playing through. I think I mentioned it a couple episodes back.
Mm-hmm. Horror?
Yeah, I think I briefly touched on it. My friend Jason introduced me to this game, and it is fantastic. So it's a turn-based RPG, which normally I'm not a huge fan on turn-based RPGs unless it's like Persona / Shin Megami Tensei, where I find the combat systems actually interesting and engaging.
Yeah.
This one has a unique little twist to it. So every character has their own sort of little thing, but the main character's gimmick is that he can transform into different things. And so throughout the game you unlock different forms to transform into, but that's not the main little gimmick. The main gimmick is that in each battle there's almost like a little quick time event that depends how successful your moves are going to be.
Yeah.
So basically there's a ring, and inside that little ring there's like a few sections that are like lit up. There's like green and red.
Mm-hmm.
So if there's 3 green sections and a red section, you have to press X in all of the green sections, and then basically the more sections you hit, the more powerful your attack's going to be, and red increases the chance of crit, I believe, a critical hit.
Okay.
So it's a very interesting mechanic that's used throughout the entire game, and on top of that there's also a sanity meter that all of your characters have. So the main character has, I think, like 20 sanity or something, but transforming decreases that. However, as each turn progresses, each character loses 1 sanity point.
Mm-hmm.
And if they run out of sanity, they go insane and start attacking just anyone willy-nilly.
A good old-fashioned confused.
Yeah,
RPG
basically.
mechanic.
And
Yeah.
I don't think they get experience from battle if they're insane when it ends.
Oh.
Yeah. So there's a punishment for it.
Generally, in turn-based RPGs, you make a selection and you watch your character do it.
Yeah.
But in this one, you say you make a selection, then this thing pops up on the screen, and it starts going around in a circle, and you have to be alive, an awake human being, in order to do well, right?
Yes, pretty much.
Okay, so...
Because if you don't hit any, you just miss.
Yeah, that's pretty great. I like when games require you to be living to play
And
them.
the other great thing about it is different buffs and debuffs will affect how the ring works. So one might make it so that it goes by a lot faster, and it's harder to hit.
But does making are there risk rewards in that where you can make it go faster, but then
I believe there are items.
Powerful?
Yeah, I believe there are items for that actually.
Oh man.
And the other cool thing is that it's not just used for battles; it's actually used in the world itself. So, say you're haggling with a shopkeeper and you want a lower price, you can use the ring to get a lower price.
That's perfect.
Yeah. Another cool thing about the game is that it had pre-rendered backgrounds, so it very much reminds me of like Final Fantasy VII, which is funny because when the game came out, I'm pretty sure it was just overshadowed by Final Fantasy X releasing a week later. So not a lot of people played it, but if you get the chance, I would 100% recommend it.
Shadow Hearts.
Yes. It also has really good music.
So...
And a story.
That's awesome. So play Shadow Hearts, play Slay the Spire, play Dynamite Heady, and the other one that I mentioned, Half-Life.
Play Death Stranding too if you don't like yourself.
Don't play I mean, you can play Death Stranding.
I personally enjoy it.
But that is going to be a wrap for us for this episode. And today's real-life advice is, all that is gold does not glitter. Thank you.